Middle grade dying, debut sales declining, and publishing suffering from romanticy fatigue. What is going on with traditional publishing? It's Lindsay and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing the spring version of my publishing trends video. Every 3 months I collect all of the data from all of the book announcements in middle grade and YA publishing and compile and collect and calculate a bunch of stats and share them here in this video with you. The hope, of course, is to help you guys find good agents and agencies to query, kind of just keep up with what's happening in publishing and be able to come up with marketable and commercial ideas. At the end of the video I also end up sharing some of my personal favorite announcements that have happened just because I like to talk about books. But before we dive into today's video, I would like to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, and that is How to Write a Novel by Reedsy. How to Write a Novel aims to help you finish your book in 101 days, with every week getting 10 to 15 high quality lessons sent directly to you, which you can complete completely at your own leisure, all 6 in one day or over the week, day by day, like I did. The lessons cover literally everything you need to know to write a novel, from preparations to beginning, secret sauce, characters, writing techniques, soggy middles, dialogue, chapters, literally everything. And one of my favorite parts of the classes are the live weekly feedback circles and webinars that help you connect with other writers and your coach. The entire program feels small and intimate and full of other writers very passionate and serious about taking their writing to the next level, almost like you're in a tight-knit MFA workshop or college class, and I appreciated that so much. The next cohort will be starting on September 2nd, so make sure you check out my affiliate link down below so you can be part of the class. It really is a great course and I really had a great time, so I do highly recommend them. Now let's chat the ins and outs of this video, how this is all going to work. First of all of these stats are going to be coming from deals that I get through Publishers Weekly. This is a completely free newsletter that you can sign up for and get all of the deals sent to you twice a week. I will only be covering middle grade and young adult fiction in this section. There is no adult list, so all of these stats are just for kid lit. Listen, at some point my math is probably going to be wrong. You might notice it, just act like you didn't and we'll move on, okay? I also like to point out that I'm not trying to police any identities here, with marginalities that I might talk about later in the video. If a author is not open, or they don't have their identity on their website or somewhere in their social medias, I'm not going to count it towards that marginality. But okay, that's all the housekeeping. Let's go ahead and jump right into the stats. All of these numbers were collected from March to May of 2024. And I always say roughly most people announce within 4 to 6 months after purchase. That's not always true, but we can roughly just estimate that these all were sold, I would say, anywhere from September through October 2023. Roughly. And the total amount of deals announced was 133. If we look back at the last 2 quarters as well, you can kind of see a comparison there. Now let's break down those deals into age categories. So middle grade and YA, you can see here the split. And this is really interesting because most of the time when I do this video, it's pretty close to 50-50. Middle grade is in fact down about 10% if we look back on winter. We're going to talk about middle grade a little bit later. Let's talk about the number of books sold per deal. You can see that here. I think the industry is pretty much changing to 1 book per deal. That seems to be the trend nowadays. It used to be like 2 book deals were like where publishing wanted to be. With all of the changes going on, I guess it kind of makes sense for them to not take any big risks in this way with a second book when the first one might not do so good. Now let's chat books sold at auction versus not at auction. This looks pretty typical to what I normally collect. And of those auctions, here are the age category split, so you can see that there. Now let's talk 6 and 7 figure deals. We had quite a few. I will go ahead and pop a couple of them up on the screen there. All of the deals announced in spring that were 6 and 7 figures were all YA. We did not have any middle grade, so that was interesting. And then I do like to look at the race of the authors that are getting the 6-figure deals, so you can see that here with the nice little breakdown. And I always like to jot down for you guys a couple of the agencies that are making the 6-figure deals, because those are always nice to add to your querying list. So here they are. Now let's talk about book format. I'll pop up the middle grade and YA individually, but you can see here this is broken down into prose, verse, graphic novel, and anthology if it applies. I always like to pay special attention to the graphic novel portions of these charts because they are on the move. This is a comparison. On the left you have the spring and on the right you have the winter. This decrease in middle grade graphic novel percentages is really interesting to me because before this we had just been having nothing but non-stop increase in the middle grade graphic novel section, and now we see almost a 10% decrease. Meanwhile in YA we have almost 3 times the amount of graphic novels being sold. So I just think that's interesting. That's definitely something I'm going to keep an eye on. Now let's chat release season. Here is the middle grade. We can see when the deals that are announced are projected to come out, and then you can see the YA as well. From making these stats for almost a year now, we can kind of see that YA seems to be a season ahead of middle grade, meaning it takes a little bit longer for whatever reason between announcement and release date, and that's probably because it's a mix of different situations. Like YA is a little bit more congested than middle grade. It might take longer for production time because they do a lot of special things with the covers and insides and things like that, and then also marketing time is very different because with middle grade you are pushing it at schools and libraries, whereas with YA you're pushing it at like bookstores, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. A little bit different situation there. Now let's look at the genre breakdown. First, let's take a look at middle grade here, and I'm always shocked by how much of middle grade sales is contemporary. I don't know why, I just always associate middle grade with fantasy, but almost always half of middle grade sales are contemporary in some way. One thing I found super fascinating this quarter, if you look at the top there, middle grade romance happened. Yeah, I found 2 deals in the past 3 months that talked about middle grade rom-coms or romantic tinged books in some way that actually sound pretty dang cute. But this is the first time in my data collection that I have seen anything talking about rom-coms or romance in middle grade. So I think that this will be an interesting space to watch. And then next, let's take a look at the YA genres, and I don't see anything too out of the norm there. YA generally has a pretty healthy split between genres. In the YA category, let's talk about the fantasy subcategories. We have high fantasy, low fantasy. High fantasy just means it is a world that you create, and low fantasy just means it is set in our world just with some kind of magical element added. These are usually pretty 50-50, so we're right on track there. And then there have been 3 sub-genres in fantasy that I've been keeping a special eye on recently. Here you can see the post-apocalyptic or dystopian numbers, the dark academia, and the romantasy numbers. Now these were deals announced that actually used these terms in the deals themselves. I think there's probably quite a few more that I could kind of surmise as being in these categories, but alas, we were trying to stick to the facts. If you've been watching these videos for a while, you know I've been watching specifically the post-apocalyptic and dystopian deals announced because there's been rumblings for a while that it's making a comeback, or at least it's trying to. I don't know if it's all because like the new wave of all these Hunger Games book releases and movies and all that stuff, but I feel like publishing is really trying to make fetch happen. And so far we're just not seeing it bought up too much. I'm here for it if they want to bring it back, but that means they have to start buying more, you know, and I'm just not seeing the correlation between the rumblings and the money spent on actually bringing it back happen, but I'll continue to keep an eye on it. I also found the romantasy stat here really interesting. Mind you, out of 133 books, 87 of those were YA, and only 5 of those were romantasy, even though like everything everywhere is about romantasy, right? I found this article on Publishers Weekly really interesting. There's been so much discourse going on about the emergence and the lifespan of romantasy that I kind of wanted to bring this up as a discussion topic in this video. One of the most insightful things for me was that this article was calling a lot of the YA released in the 2010s as romantasy, like Cassandra Clare, Renee Ahdieh, Tiara Mafi, and I really never thought of these as romantasy, but going back and thinking about those books, like yeah, that's what they were. Fourth Wing was kind of like the front runner for this next wave, helping like make it like a phenomenon. This article goes on to interview Erin Files, who works at Avitas, and talked about how in YA it was either they all want romantasy or they're so over romantasy, there's no like middle ground, as if we're at the height of the trend, which again is super interesting to me because according to my data there have only been 5 books sold with the term romantasy. Laura Crockett talks about how books are being miscategorized as romantasy when it's really fantasy horror, fantasy adventure, or dark academia that just so happens to have a romantic B or C plot. Readers see a female author's name on a fantasy cover and think it's YA, or they see a YA book with a woman's name on it and they think it's romantasy. I think this is so true. I'm seeing a lot of books that maybe when they were purchased and their deals were announced, they weren't categorized as romantasy, but as marketing is starting to come out, as the cover is revealed and the publisher is starting to push it, you can see where they're kind of like hyping up the fact that this could fit in that romantasy category, but they just don't say it. For example, fantasy books following trends of popular book covers in romantasy. Like you see a certain cover and you get an idea of what the book's about, and romantasy covers tend to look similar. So when you're making a just basic YA fantasy and you slap a cover on it that looks like Serpent and the Wings of Night, readers are going to get a certain idea what the book's about. And obviously this is going to lead to disappointment. You're going to get people who pick up this book wanting a romantasy and the romance is like not even a B plot, it's like a C plot, and they're like, what the heck? And then you'll have other readers who just see the cover and are like, yeah, no, I'm gonna skip that, I don't want romantasy. The thing is, it's not romantasy, and they could have really loved the book had it had a matching cover, but publishers don't care. They just want you to buy it because romantasy's hot and they want your money. They don't care about your disappointment. But with my stats in the last 3 months having such a small amount of books bought under the genre of romantasy, it makes me think publishing is kind of catching on. Like, they don't want to be caught saying something's romantasy, so they're just doing what I talked about, where they're just like softly saying it's romantasy, and like if you mess up and think it's the wrong thing, that's on you. Maybe that's why there's only 5 sales, but like romantasy is everywhere. I don't know. I also still think it's much bigger in this like adult category. They're trying to make like new adult with this, so I think that's why that's happening. It's still having like trickle effects in YA, but I don't know, very interesting. Some editors are taking a more positive approach to this whole romantasy boom and seeing it as a way to get more diverse voices in their inbox and tell more unique stories. Crockett also goes on to say that she thinks the BIPOC area and the queer romantasies will start to boom, as well as seeing space-based and futuristic settings rather than in fae worlds, with some near future and dystopian narratives peeking in. We'll see, Laura. We'll see. Literally, we'll see, because I'm keeping stats. Now let's get back to the stats. Let's talk about debut sales versus repeat sales. This is for the YA. This is looking pretty typical to what I've been collecting, but with middle grade, they are buying a ton less debuts. This is a big change from even what I collected in the winter. I mean, that's down by half. And to take it even further, let's look all the way back to fall. You can see it's just dropping and dropping and dropping. Now let's talk about the middle grade issue going on. Rachel Reeds made her own video where she talks about kind of like the middle grade crisis and what's going on with middle grade and how book banning is intersecting with that, and schools and libraries losing funding and things like that. So go check out her video. It's brilliant, but I did find this Publishers Weekly article really interesting and I wanted to bring it up. So the CEO of Abrams Books was talking about how YA sales are up significantly while middle grade are down. TLDR, a lot of this is happening because of Barnes & Noble's choice not to stock all new debut hardcovers. They're only taking in certain ones that they think are going to sell, and even then they're focusing on tried and true sales more than just like taking in everyone. I recently made a video talking about how this has impacted me personally. I'll link that video down below. But because middle grade sales are kind of in a weird space right now, publishers are focusing on their franchises. They're focusing on books that they know are selling, and that's probably why they are taking less debuts. She goes on to talk about how book banning is affecting all of these sales. Middle grade marketing is very different from YA. With YA, you have kids with their own money buying their own books, and they're going to Amazon or they're going to Barnes & Noble to buy these books. Whereas children do not typically have their own money or buy their own books. Books are usually bought for them or given to them by teachers and librarians. So the main channel of sales that publishers use to push middle grade is through these schools and libraries, and book banning is specifically affecting schools and libraries. So that's obviously having an impact on how many debuts that publishing can afford to take on right now. Anyway, it's like a really interesting phenomenon going on with that. I highly recommend you checking out Rachel's video. Go read the article yourself. No one has any idea what middle grade is or becoming at the moment. Next, we're going to look at author identities, starting with gender. This is the middle grade chart here. One thing that I think is so interesting, since publishers are not buying as many middle grade debuts, they're buying from tried and true middle grade authors. We actually see a little bit of a jump in the amount of men's books being bought and sold. There are a lot of male authors. I think of like Brian Selznick and the guy who writes the Dogman books. Like, maybe that's what they're really focusing on. Instead of taking risks on the debuts, they're like buying more books from these people who have got really well established middle grade series. So maybe that's why we're seeing a jump in male sales here. That's up 16% from fall. So interesting. Now let's talk about author sexuality. We have middle grade and YA here. Nothing too much has changed with the middle grade, but we do have a slight decrease over the past 3 quarters with YA. And kind of the same situation with race. Middle grade is pretty stable, but with YA we're seeing a slight decrease over the quarters as they go on. Speaking of race, for all of the deals announced, this is the POC breakdown of the specifics. And then moving on to disability, these are sad but true. These don't seem to change too often. Now I'm going to take you over to my desk and we are going to talk about some of the deals that I am most excited to come out. Now let's look over some of the deals that I am so excited for. There are 5 this quarter, and honestly, I kind of just screenshotted them as they came in. I kind of forget what they are, so let's rediscover it together. Okay, this first one. HarperCollins has acquired a locked room YA fantasy, I Killed the King, and a sequel, pitched as The Glass Onion with Magic. Yes, now I remember why. When the king is murdered on the eve of a historic war-ending ball, 6 suspects, one of whom is the killer, will have 12 hours to uncover who killed the king and why the body count keeps rising before a strange winter storm buries the castle at dawn. Oh my gosh, that sounds perfect. Then we have Putnam Buying Very Dangerous Things, which is a YA murder mystery with flair for fans of the Agathas and Truly Devious. I love Truly Devious. Like, it's one of my favorite YA series right now. The story follows Dulce Castillo, a student with a magnetic school. I don't know what a magnetic school is. Call in if you know. A magnet school for criminology that stages a murder mystery game, which turns into a real investigation when the student playing the victim winds up dead. Yep, same category. I haven't gotten to this author's debut. Novel yet, but if you have read it, let me know down in the comments what you thought of it. But I love the idea of a murder mystery game. Like, I just imagine like Clue and everyone in their like 1920s, 1930s outfit, like the long cigarettes and like, no, I didn't commit the murder, sir. Okay, next. Also, can we just take a moment to appreciate this author's photo? Like, there's so much joy in this photo. I love it. Putnam again has acquired Most Likely to Murder, a YA thriller about a senior class whose yearbook most likely twos are replaced with twisted forecasts of the student's death. That's fantastic. What begins as a prank quickly turns deadly as the predictions start coming true, leaving senior Rick Hicks and Martina Lopez in a desperate race to uncover the faceless killer before they're next. Oh my god, this just sounds like a CW show. I'm here for it. Okay, the next one is a YA horror. This is called Hazelthorn, a gothic YA horror pitched for fans of Knives Out and Belladonna, in which a teenage orphan inherits a reclusive billionaire's estate and must contend with murderous relatives, dark secrets, and a mysterious garden with a taste for blood. Yup. I could break down every single word in this and be like, yep, that's a buzzword. Gothic horror, yep. Knives Out, yep. Inheriting a reclusive billionaire's estate, murderous relatives, I love a messy family, and a garden with a taste for blood. And our last one, oh yeah, I was super excited about this. Okay, so Paul Tremblay is a adult author, and he's like pretty well known. He's had at least one of his books turned into a movie, which is pretty cool. And as far as I know, yeah, this is his first like foray into middle grade, which is super cool. The book follows a 12-year-old Casey who is dealing with the fallout after a cyberbullying incident. A strange new playmate, Morel, shows up at Casey's house made of a clay-like substance with the eerie, featureless appearance of a mannequin. As Morel stays in Casey's house, his influence over the entire family grows in a sinister way. First of all, just the pitch in general sounds so good, but it's really funny because this sounds so much like Bitter Bones in the first iteration of Bitter Bones, which is my middle grade horror that I'm working on. The main character's name is Casey as well. It changes in later drafts, but it started out as Casey. Clay-like substance, which is interesting because mine is all about dolls, and like the porcelain behind them plays a big part in the book. And the fact that it's like about a doll itself, kind of like a mannequin, is just so interesting. I'm like, me and Paul Tremblay, like we're on the same wavelength here. So you guys will have to let me know. Are you excited for any of these books? Do any of them sound good to you? Do you have any thoughts? You want to weigh in a little bit on the whole middle grade situation or the romantasy situation? I would love to know. I would be so appreciative if you guys would just give a like on this video, or just like leave a little comment telling me you appreciate it, or just, I don't know, you could leave a comment just saying poop or something. These videos do take a massive amount of work, so I appreciate any little like that you leave me. And if you'd like to subscribe, you can do that too. But thank you guys for checking this video out. I hope you had a great time being nosy like me and going through all the stats and all of the recent tea going on in traditional publishing. Don't forget to check out my affiliate link for how to write a novel. And I hope you all have a good day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.